Okay, we are live. This is Isaac Chase with Firearms Training Central, and I'm here with Mike Duff of Group 6 Training out of Dallas, Texas. And we're going to talk about some firearms training today. So, how are you doing today, Mike?
I'm great.
Doing
I'm
great. You
excellent.
enjoying the summer weather down there in Dallas?
It's hot.
It's hot.
It's hot. I'm spending all week at the range this week, so
Yeah,
enjoying
yeah.
it.
Drinking a lot of water.
Yes,
Yeah.
hydration.
All right. So I wanted to start by asking you to give us your professional background. What do you tell students when you start a class?
Uh, Especially if they haven't trained with me before or met with me, uh, I think it's important to give a background so people know where your training methodology comes from. So mine, a significant part of it is I'm a retired 32-year law enforcement officer. I worked for a mid-sized city in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area. And I was really lucky coming up when I did to get the opportunities that I did. I've worked in narcotics for about 10 years. I was on SWAT most of my career. Now, in an agency my size, that's a part-time job that you work along with whatever other training that you have or what other assignments you have. SWAT narcotics gave me a lot that translates into what I'm doing today. And of course, I worked patrol. I responded to calls. I was a detective for about 9 years as well. And some of that experience translates as well. I've investigated when citizens have had encounters with home intruders. Some of them use force or even deadly force, and I conducted those investigations. And others honestly got lucky when the suspect fled the area. That's my police side. Concurrent with that, starting around 2000, really starting in 94, I became an instructor, a police instructor, but then I got a separate job with a police academy. This is a regional academy, not affiliated or under the umbrella of one agency, and we're located in the Fort Worth area, and we basically serve agencies all over North Texas. And I've been an instructor there since 94, and in 2004 became one of the firearms instructors, and I can go into more detail on that. But I still hold that job today. In fact, I work out there an average about 2 weeks a month, and that's where I've been this week. I teach the recruits. I teach other instructors. I do the firearms instructor certification class to make new instructors from agencies for their agency. And we've recently developed an advanced fire instructor development class. The goal of that one is to update people who are already instructors because there's a lot of more advanced or contemporary training methodology based on sports science and psychology and just how our bodies work that honestly they're much easier. It's easier to get people to shoot better sooner, and it's almost like in the past the whole firearms training got a little overcomplicated, and so we're able to get significant results in less time. And of course, Group 6 training, the reason we're talking. In 2010, I started a private firearms training business to reach out to responsible citizens who want to be armed and learn all the things I've learned through 32 years of law enforcement. And what we've created at the academy, I'm allowed to separately through my business take to the public, whether it's academic, mental preparation, or of course firearm skills.
Well, that's a great summary. This question is not on the list that I sent you, but I wanted to ask you because you have experience not only training police officers, but also working as a police officer and
Okay.
working in high risk situations, and now transitioning to teaching civilians. So I wanted to ask you, what is the biggest thing that is different between being a police officer and being a regular citizen when it comes to firearms training and firearms skills? And what is the biggest similarity, would you say, that translates over?
There's a lot of similarity. Um, in the academy I taught, I was the lead use of force instructor for about 10 years. And that's academic, and it's when you can use deadly force, when you can't, and to what levels. And that's identical to the license to carry program in the state of Texas, where I had 16 hours in the academy to convey that information. I get a couple hours in a license to carry class, but the laws that a citizen are judged by are exactly the same that an officer is going to be judged by, and sadly, the training opportunities are a lot less. So there's a similarity and a difference. On the firearms, there's a perception that all police get a lot of training and that all officers are necessarily good shooters. And their job is so multifaceted that that's not really the case. They meet a standard, but each individual officer may prioritize that differently. So there's kind of similarity there with the citizens. There's a state standard to shoot a qualification course to get a license to carry in Texas. It's not highly demanding, but it's a verification of basic marksmanship skills and safe weapons handling. And it's kind of on the citizen to go farther than that. So the standards, the judgment standards are the same. The training may be different. And for the citizen, the training is really, the responsibility of it is in their lap.
Yeah. All right, great. I might follow up with that a little bit later or at a later time in another interview. So let's move on. I wanted to ask you, what is it that motivated you to get into firearms training? Like you said, you served as a police officer for a number of years, and then you got into the training side. What was it that motivated you to want to go that direction?
Looking back, there was definitely a pivotal point in 2002 in my career. And what that coincided with was, again, I was lucky. I get to work narcotics at different task forces. Well, from 99 to 2002, I was in a federal task force with a focus on drug enforcement. And I worked there for 3 years. It was a great opportunity, and especially on the training side. We got so much opportunity. The funding was there. We went to the range once a month, but we shot about 500 rounds in half a day. But more than just shooting, they had very competent, skilled instructors that really cared. We were all part of the same unit. They really improved my shooting skills. And as an instructor myself, in the background, I'm always, well, I like the way he taught that, or I'm going to use this, I'm going to use that. And it was very empowering and very motivating and rewarding. Then we'd spend the second half of the day with reality-based munitions training. So the firearm skills were part of the equation. And then we'd go into simulated drug raids, officer rescues, drug takedowns, that kind of thing. In addition to that, I think I went to 4 SWAT schools in the 3 years I was there. Some of them out of state, some of them put on by special forces cadres at military bases. When I got back from that and returned to my police department, that was 2002. And all of a sudden, I craved training like I never had before. I needed to fill the void that they had gotten me almost addicted to, was that great level of training. So I sought other training. I got back on my SWAT team. I became really active in when we did training, whether it was even my turn to run training or not. I was volunteering to help, designing annual scenarios, bringing in actors and role players, and kind of really trying to take things to the next level. You know, again, inspired by that task force I was in. Looking back, I always had a knack for training, or a desire to. In prior narcotics units, I would kind of mentor and help the new narcotics officers. Same with detectives, same with patrol officers. But that hunger that I had when I came back to patrol, coupled with the schedule. So in patrol, we worked half the week and we were off half the week. So I'd already had an affiliation with the academy, but now I had more time and definitely more motivation and desire. So at that point, I started training, teaching out there a lot. And from the use of force to SWAT kind of stuff like building search, active shooter, reality-based like scenario training that they would do at the end of the academy. And I would even see the transition. I might teach this class the academic use of force, come back a month or two later when they're having to put it into real life application. And at first there'd be hesitance. This class that, got great marks on the test now face a simulated active shooter and may hesitate to engage them when they need to. And so then I would reverse engineer it, and come up with different training methods to, even in a classroom, get you involved, get all of them involved, and dialogue it, and even just verbally role play. And then I could test that at the end of the next couple months when we put it to the test again. Results were better. So I'm constantly trying to better and evolve the way I train, and I learn from the students I teach. I learn from what works, what doesn't. So there's the motivation.
Mm-hmm.
It was around 2010 when I guess I decided my schedule wasn't full enough, and that I needed to start a business and take it to the outside as well.
Yeah. I think that's important for instructors, that a good instructor is a very good student, because once you feel like you've learned everything you need to know, you no longer become useful.
You're done. And then as the calendar flips by, you become outdated.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
As guys change the way they attack, we learn better ways to perform any physical skill. There's no athlete that's performing his sport and training for his sport the same way they did 10 years ago.
Right, exactly. And also, I think it translates into an attitude that the student can sense, that the instructor cares enough to learn and wants to give you the best information possible, not just as they learned it 20 years ago, but as has evolved, and that they care enough about your skills that they don't keep their ego tied up in their own knowledge and skills. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. If you could impart one primary idea to every gun owner about self-defense, what would it be? Like, if an idea of what it means, what self-defense means, and what training means.
I'm going to use an intro from my license to carry class.
Okay.
I thank them for being there, not just as a customer, but what I'm trying to do is I genuinely appreciate, as a former cop, the fact that they're taking it upon themselves to now be responsible for their own outcome if they're attacked, if somebody breaks in, for their own self-defense. And I tell them that. And then I say, and to anybody watching this video, they're obviously interested in self-defense and doing it the right way and getting training and vetting an instructor. They're this far into this video and they haven't clicked off.
Right.
So I thank them. I sincerely applaud them for taking that initiative. And then I don't give this as bad news. It's reality. This is a commitment. It is a bit of a lifestyle to carry a gun and to be more situationally aware, and it affects a lot of things. It can affect equipment and how I dress, and if I have a drink when I go out to dinner or not, and even where I sit when I eat dinner. And it doesn't have to become paranoia. It's just preparation and planning, and I would sum it up by saying it's a commitment. It's a commitment to keep that in the background as you go through life, paying more attention. Avoidance is better than winning a encounter any day. And the commitment to training. And training's kind of multifaceted. There's the academic part. If we're sitting in a license to carry class, they get that. There's mental preparation. People really fixate on gear and things like that. I love gear. I love buying new guns. But that's like a hobby. The self-defense part of it, that's just a tool. And so you need the physical skill set. So there's typical firearms training. But it's got to be in context. You got to have the academic knowledge to not be indecisive if you have to act. The mental preparation to be able to take a human life. That's what we're talking about here. And then the skill set to carry it out if that's what has to happen.
Yeah, I think commitment is a big one because people get it in their idea that, or their head, this idea that I can buy a gun and therefore I will be safe. Um, and that's ignoring there are a lot of things, but in my experience, my what I've seen of people, they don't even know how to be safe with the gun, let alone use the gun to keep them safe. And so that commitment is a really important thing. You need to be committed to not just buying new gear or buying a gun and a holster and calling yourself prepared, but you need to be prepared how to be safe and how to continue to grow your skills. So I think that's a good word, is commitment. Okay,
Absolutely.
um, so I'm going to skip the next question because you kind of summarized it there, and so I'm going to move on to the next one, which is what do you feel makes a good firearms instructor? And when people are looking for an instructor, obviously in the police world, you're kind of stuck with who you get, who the department hires or
Sure.
what the academy hires. But for private citizens, what do you think makes a good instructor, and what do you think it's helpful to look for in an instructor when you're choosing one?
It's it's a daunting task. I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, North Texas. Texas is a wonderful place to live, and um, I have no idea how many firearms instructors are in Texas. And then how are you going to weed them out? Great question. How do you vet your instructors? If a guy was in the military, that indicates a certain amount of weapons proficiency. Well, depending on their role, maybe so, probably so. If they're a cop, we assume they know the law and can communicate it, though that's the big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And that they're proficient with firearms, but then can transfer that skill. The world's greatest shooter is not necessarily the best teacher. So I would start there. Above all, this person has to be a teacher. I'm lucky to have the resume and career I have. A lot of that was good timing and nagging them enough to they kept sending me to the cool jobs. But if I can't translate that, the benefit of what I've gone through, what I've lived and learned to the student, then it's, I could write a book or something maybe, but they're looking for a teacher, number one. Like I've kind of already said, the teacher needs to be open to change and continued development. So in my area, with all the potential, if the directory that you are setting up is fantastic, the review process, I think, is key. Talk to people who have taken their class. You can have a charismatic guy who shoots well and it's fun to go shooting. Find out what's the last class they went to. We already touched on that. A good teacher is always a student. So I go to a class. I go to a couple classes a year. I'm lucky sometimes the academy sends me. They bring outside instructors from all over the world. People you see on TV winning competitions have come and taught us. Military guys, special ops guys. Really fortunate in that area. But I also dig into my pocket and take some of the earnings and go to a couple schools on my own. Ask them what's the last training they've taken. And I think a good question would be, have you changed anything about how you shoot recently? Because what we want to find out is this guy really good at repeating what somebody taught him 20 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
And not that it necessarily doesn't work or it's wrong, but believe me, there are better ways to teach and better ways to shoot. And all the newer methods that we've embraced are easier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This week is basic firearms at the academy. I called everybody before lunch today.
Mm-hmm.
80 to 98% scores.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 5-day class, and we just took the test in the morning of the third day. The first half of the day was classroom.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, other instructors that ran that would just run the qual course over and over, and on Friday they'd pass. I told them this is a small step on the way to becoming someone who can defend themselves and be safe around the public.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going forward. Tomorrow, the whole day is low light training.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We get into a lot of dynamic situations.
Yeah.
I guess to summarize, they need to continually be a student. Not that we have to change what we teach all the time, but be open to better methods, even if it means that I've reloaded my gun a certain way for 16 years. If there's a better, more efficient method, not just for me, but for my students, then I need to change the comfort zone and learn the new skill set and then test it, filter it, make sure it fits. Is it relevant for stressful self-defense? Is it good and legal? Is it safe in the public, not just at a range? If it meets all the filtering process, then my curriculum just changed.
Uh-huh.
And somebody who takes my class this year, it might be a little different than what they took a couple of years ago.
Right. Which is a good reason to take another class with you, right?
Well, there's that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of efficiency, of what demonstrates a job getting done better and faster than the way we used to do it. And I mean, that's all of human progress right there, is increasing efficiency. It doesn't always come out for good in every situation, but if we compare competition shooters or self-defense shooters or police shooters, we should see a progression of efficiency over time, not a stagnation. And so that's a good point, is what have you gotten better at? What have you changed in order to improve? So I like that. Okay, what do you think is, in your experience, what do you think is the most effective way to actually motivate gun owners or even police? I mean, we'll take the whole spectrum here, to seek out more training. I know police officers get offered training sometimes, and sometimes it's mandatory. What do you think is the primary motivation that works for people to get them to pursue more training?
That's tough. That's the marketing side of this business. Mm-hmm. And I'm a lot more versed at the teaching, shooting, and class than I am the marketing. But again, it comes back to, why are you carrying a gun? You know, for a citizen, you're carrying a gun in case, you know, an aggressive, violent person decides to hurt you, rob you. That person's comfortable with that. You know, we're good people, or we're not going to training classes, and we're not paying a state for a license and going through all the proper protocols, be it officer or citizen. We are acknowledging that we may face somebody who's decided that their job in life is to be a predator and attack people. They're comfortable with fights, and they're comfortable with violence. And our nature as good people, officer or citizen, is almost to kind of freeze when we get that fear response. It's very natural. People don't like to admit it sometimes. So that's why we have to train and become proficient, and the training has to involve all those layers. You know, mental prep, legal, physical. It's hard for me to figure out why there's not motivation, but if every weekend my classes were flooded, I wouldn't be talking to you to get on a directory to reach more students. But the motivation is, why are you doing it in the first place? So then what's at stake? You know, what's at stake if you miss is the liability of hurting somebody else who's innocent, of not being able to react properly quick enough, is you did all this and you or your family still got hurt. Or academically you make a bad choice and now you're in legal trouble. Mm-hmm. That's the motivation, is, again, look at the commitment and look at all the context that goes with it.
Yeah. On the freeze response that you mentioned, a lot of people can go to the range and shoot and feel like they're prepared, and not understand violence, and not understand the switch that maybe they have in their head that they don't even know is there, that they're not going to be violent unless they know how to flip that switch. And so, I mean, I see an amazing number of, I do a lot of research and watch a lot of videos and read a lot of books. An amazing number of people who are confronted with violence do not react with violence because they're conditioned to not be violent. They're conditioned to find the diplomatic way out, and not be willing to resort to violence. And the ability to differentiate when diplomatic responses are necessary and violent responses are necessary, that really does come with being comfortable with violence, and getting to a place where you feel like you can control it. And that's, if I could impart that idea to people, that would, satisfy my my motivation to get people to get training is understand that it's not as simple as pulling the gun out and pulling the trigger. You know, everything comes down to what happens up here first before what happens, you know, in your hands or in your fist or in your mouth, you know, if that's what gets you out of the situation. So, and the other thing is, I think people in general don't understand what's at stake. We are not really good at breaking down risk and understanding real risk. And so, you know, a lot of people, for instance, will spend money on gear. They'll spend money buying a new AR and think that that's going to defend their house, when what they probably should have done first is spend $100 on a good lock on the front door rather than, you know, what's on there right now. I mean, if you were really concerned with risk, you'd keep the bad guy out of your house before you had to shoot him when he gets in the house, you know. But I'm not in the business of promoting locks. I'm in the business of promoting people to get good training. And so people, I think, struggle with understanding risk and putting priorities where, you know, where they belong, I think. So not to impart too much of my idea, but I just kind of got my brain thinking while you were talking about that. So
and I absolutely agree. I offer a pretty unique class that I don't think a lot of people in my position do. It's called Combat Mindset. It's mental preparation to use lethal force. I acknowledge where a lot of my material comes from. Some very famous people that do lecture tours and have written great books. I start the class by saying, go buy this guy's books. But let's talk about it. Ironically or surprisingly, the class wasn't a mandated part of the police academy. And I got my bosses to let me add a 4-hour block on that. This is an odd testimonial. I taught a class on a Friday, and that Monday one of the recruits came in and quit.
Really?
Yeah. And I don't know how to feel about it still. It's been almost 10 years ago. I felt bad that somebody went through all that effort and some agency hired him. And he went to his agency and said, this guy named Mike Duff told me about taking a life, and I don't want to do it, and I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Then I do feel good about that class. Must have been pretty impactful. And the fact that it made him soul search. And maybe this isn't for everybody.
Yeah, better to find out in the academy, you know.
And the armed citizen, if they're not mentally prepared, they're just carrying around a heavy fashion accessory that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You have to be able to use it when it's legal and, you know, moral, or it's a liability. It's not an asset.
And for some people, that changes over time. You know, a young person may not feel that attached to defending themselves, and then once they have children, that instinct gets awoken inside of them. And so, another reason why, you know, the attitude, oh, I grew up around guns, I know what I'm doing. Well, yeah, but you don't maybe understand yourself. You know, you might understand the firearm, but you don't understand yourself until you're presented with new and challenging ideas about self-defense. So, yeah, it's good stuff. So I have to ask this because everybody asks everybody this, but what is your favorite handgun or carry gun? And
gear. Okay, cool. And I'm a gear guy.
Yeah.
I own way more guns than I need. Probably for close to 10 years, I've been carrying a Glock 19. And in fact, it's funny, today I own 2 of them, and I switched over from my favorite one that I train with all the time and carry to the basic kind of new stock one. I put the sights on it I like, and now I'm carrying it because that other one just had, I have no idea, 20, 30,000 rounds through it. And I'll train with it, and when it quits, I figured out what's wrong with it and put the new spring in it or whatever.
Right.
And a good friend of mine said, yeah, it's time to carry something different, man.
Right.
So, yes, but it's a Glock 19. It has a Streamlight TLR1 HL, a 600 or 800 lumen, what most would consider a duty weapon-mounted light on it. We have to see, to think, to decide, to then use deadly force. And I can't predict if I'm going to get attacked in daylight or at night. So I love the idea of having a real light mounted on it at all times.
Mm-hmm.
I don't switch. Oh, I'm going out to a movie. I'll put the light on. I'm running around during the day. It's off. I carry an appendix, which I think is an acceptable method with a good quality rigid holster designed for the gun and with proper training. There's a slight added risk to the muzzle orientation. I always carry an extra little flashlight because sometimes you need to see but not point a gun at people.
Yeah.
Pocket knife. I've had a little training in there. That's a void I need to fix. I need more training in that being a last-ditch self-defense tool.
Mm-hmm.
And I've started carrying a tourniquet because it kind of makes sense. I mean, it's only so much you can carry on your body.
Right.
But a gun with a light, an extra light, a knife, a tourniquet. If I'm carrying something that makes bad holes, I might need to be able to defend and fix bad holes.
Right, right. There's a lot of great information coming out of body cams now, and one of those pieces of information is what a difference a light makes on a firearm. Because, you get the idea. SWAT operators, of course, they have flashlights, but patrol cops with lights, and when you see body cams with and without lights, it makes an enormous difference on what they can see the bad guy doing or what he's not doing. I saw a video recently of a cop in Albuquerque who shot a suspect, and when the light was on, it was like, wow, you can see everything, but it wasn't a constant on. It was only on when he wanted it on, so you got a really good idea of what you could and could not see without that light on there. And so lights, and then the tourniquet thing, I saw another video of an officer just recently applying a tourniquet to a suspect that he had shot, and he was carrying it on his ankle, which I thought was really cool because, we think ankle carry for a gun, is it convenient, is it not, can you get to it? But the ankle is a valid place to carry some things, pretty regularly without really sacrificing any kind of an advantage, so.
Right.
Yeah.
And it can, if you need a tourniquet, you need it quickly, but maybe not in the measuring it in a second or two like you would a draw from a holster, a couple extra seconds to get the tourniquet. Basically, I would say the trade-off would be better to have it on you than think you're going to be able to run back to the car when you need it.
Right, right. Exactly.
So even if it's a tad bit slower on your body, it's still on your body.
Exactly. Yeah. So good information.
The lights, the weapon lights. It's unique that I'm in a academy that's not tied to an agency. So we teach them what we feel are the best practices out there. And I share that with my citizen clients. I don't really filter anything. They're facing the same threats, just without backup and without a vest.
Right. Yeah.
The idea of the light, there are still agencies that are uncomfortable with a weapon-mounted light because they feel like, well, that light has a gun attached to it. Yes. So all the rules that apply to who you should point a gun at and who you should not point a gun at still apply. But it is better to be able to identify that that person is a deadly threat or discover they're not when you're in that kind of situation. And I recommend have another light for people that you shouldn't point a gun at, but you still need to see what's going on.
Right.
It's a training issue. They may hear one horror story of an officer being reckless or inappropriate with a light that happens to be attached to the gun. My response is discipline him about the gun. Yeah. Light is just another tool.
Well, it's not like officers never carried flashlights separately, so a weapon-mounted light in addition to what you should be carrying already, which is a non-weapon-mounted light. But, people think they get kind of focused in a mindset and they want to run down the worst-case scenario in the mindset instead of kind of opening it up for an actual discussion and really let's get to the bottom of what works and what doesn't. So, well, I wanted to thank you very much. I want to give you a chance to give your website out and any other contact information. If you've got social media you want people to know about, just how can people find you?
Sure. Again, I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I don't have a range, so I train at local indoor ranges that welcome me. I do outdoor training in Dallas. So I have a website, group6training.com, and I have both spell it all out, the word group 6 training and group 6 the number group6training.com. I'm on Instagram, group6training.com, and facebook.com/group6training.
Okay, great. Is there anything you wanted to add before we finish up here?
Oh, I could go on. I
Yeah.
could go on.
Well,
But
I would.
no, I appreciate the opportunity. And again, a directory like yours is so vital because I think people know they need training. Uh, we all kind of procrastinate sometimes on actually getting things done and locking something in on a calendar or going ahead and paying for it, putting it on your calendars. I have to put a day off on my calendar sometime or I
Hmm.
don't get one. But
Hmm.
um, it is hard to figure out with all of us out there who's just a fun old guy that loves guns and
Hmm.
who is serious and knowledgeable about what they're teaching and vetting what they're sharing versus just kind of repeating stuff. um, it's tough, man. The
Hmm.
people that come to me get referred to me usually from my own old department or through a couple gun shops that have referred customers to me for a very long time. And it would be a challenge just to wake up one day in this area and say, I want to go take a shooting class
Right.
because there's a ton of them around here.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
some of them are good. I'm
It's
not the only good one,
that
but
choice
some of them
blindness.
aren't.
That choice blindness thing is like, okay, well, if I have to choose between one or the other, that's an easy choice. If I have to choose between one and 30 others, how do I just narrow it down to the point where I can even make a decision? Let
Right.
alone signing up for the class. So, well, I appreciate you making time for us, and I would like to do a follow-up interview at some time and get more in depth about some of these training philosophies
Sure.
and strategies that
Absolutely.
you like to do. This interview will be up on YouTube before the end of the day, and you can share that link out with anybody who you want to. You
Okay.
can even, if you know how to do it, you can even pull the video down and mirror it up on your YouTube channel, to use for marketing and stuff. So really
Okay.
appreciate having you on, and I'm going to sign off, but we won't hang up, and we'll just go from there.
All right.
So thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.